So let's look a little bit more on how Panther does its normalization process. So when data comes in, it really is in any format. It could be a CSV file, it could be JSON, it could be some random HTTP style log. And what we end up doing is we normalize it all into JSON, but we also extract out IOCs from wherever the data is in your log. So if you've worked with JSON logs in the past, you're probably pretty familiar that they can be very highly nested. And if you're processing these events and you want to look at IPs or domains and hashes, it can be a little tedious to have to always go through the nesting flow. So what we do is we actually pull all the IPs out. We walk the entire log, pull out the IPs, domains, hashes, really anything into the top level. And then this makes it really, really easy to write these detections. And it makes it really easy for you to also threat hunt in the data lake. So let's look a little bit more in practice how these two are applied. So this log is an ALB log, and that's an application load balancer on Amazon. You can see it's essentially looking at traffic flows. So if I have a web server that's running, it's kind of like a layer 7 style log. So it'll tell you like the path and the IPs and other things, like the request URI, the type of request, etc. But the IPs are sort of scattered into these different fields, but we collect it into a top level array called p underscore any IP addresses. And then we can use that field in a rule. So this example, I'm essentially looking for real-time hits to some specific IP address. And this, I think the best use case for this is really if you have something that's ongoing, if you have an incident ongoing, and you have a small amount of IPs that you want to track, you can use a rule like this to get those hits right away. You could also have a huge set of IPs as a helper that you could also import here. And because we're doing set-based operations, it's pretty performant to, based off of the structure that we're collecting all these IPs and IOCs into. So this rule would do some logic, filtering logic as well, and then it would just run this IP check function to determine if there's an intersection. But in a new feature that we recently added called the indicator search, you can do this on the historical side as well. So the rule will operate on the logs as they're streaming through, and then the indicator search will help on the data in the data lake. So what I did here is I ran a query for this domain id5-sync.com, which is just kind of a random domain. And I looked in the last 2 days and I saw that, oh, there was a couple hits in Umbrella, Cisco Umbrella, which is monitoring all DNS requests. So the way that this is actually working behind the scenes is it's using those normalized fields to really quickly go over our entire data set. So it makes it really easy to threat hunt. And since all this data is very highly structured, we get the benefit of speed, but also being able to process this in real time.